Right guys, Corey back with an updated build on my Lord Slug deck profile that I posted a while ago. So with the release of Set 7 I decided to update this just a little bit. Obviously it's not the most competitive deck in the world, but it's just a really fun casual deck and I really do enjoy the deck, so I thought I'd share with all of you my build. So I'll quickly run down what the leader does and then I'll get to the actual deck itself. If you don't actually want to watch the video, I'll put in the description down below the deck list so you can just copy that or just use mine as a rough guide onto what you want to play in your build. But yeah, I'm just going to explain all the new cards and like the things that people may not actually know properly, but I'll not obviously just run through the whole deck as fast as I can. So the leader, Unawakened, what he does is he has an active main where once per turn you can take a life and gain crit, basically, and then when you're at 4 less life, you draw 2 and flip them over. On the flip side, when he attacks, you draw, and then he has an active main where you can discard a card, and if you do, the opponent has to discard a card as well. So he's a pretty solid leader overall. He's a really unique leader, and I feel like he's very underrated. So, yeah. So I'm going to start off with the extra cards. So the extra cards I do play, I play 2 copies of Preemptive Strike, 4 copies of Shock and Death Ball, 2 copies of Sacrifice, and 2 copies of Frieza Army Sealing Pod. So the reasons why I play these is Preemptive Strike, pretty self-explanatory. It's a good control card, especially when you're trying to make a play and you don't want the opponent to have board to be aggressive with, especially if you're taking your own life. Having 6 negates in the deck is comfortable, in my opinion. Obviously, having a negate that's live when you're tapped out without needing sparking is pretty useful, especially if the opponent plays like heavy hitters, for an example, skillless. You can just control it, especially with a card like this, being able to KO the 1-drops and 2-drops. It's pretty good. And then Frieza Army Healing Pod, if you can establish this really early in the game, it pays itself off in the end game. It really does help. Being able to draw cards multiple times, it's just really useful. And being able to revive a 4 cost, especially if your board gets wiped, it's a pretty good card in my opinion. It's not necessary to play, but I really do enjoy it. I feel like it's a good card. The black cards I play in the deck, I do play 2 copies of Kami, 1 Towa Dimension Leaper, and then 2 of the Bardock Awakened Instincts. So Kami, it's like I say, it's pretty standard. The deck struggles against actually controlling the board. So if you can, or if you go against someone who's actually building a board faster than you can deal with their hand, you can just blow up the board and be like, right, reset the board. Now we're at the same pace. The Bardock is basically just a walk-in super combo. He draws you 2 cards and then discards 1 on play. And he can also swing at the board for, basically it's a free card. It's really nice. Yeah, and then Towa, so she's a new card. So basically what she does is she's a blocker with Revenge, and her skill is you can play her when the opponent plays a battle card, so she's counterplay, and you play her by removing 2 cards from your drop area and sending them to warp. So being able to respond to an opponent's bomb card or something that's really like a threatening card with this just for free is just so good in my opinion. I feel like having something that just threatens the opponent to think if they can't remove this or can't deal with this, they have to somehow sacrifice something to remove it, which I feel like is just really useful. Any resources that they're using to remove stuff that I have is always a benefit, regardless of what you're doing. I do play 2 copies of the double strikes. You don't need to play them. I just felt like because I'm running crits, especially with the leader and a couple of the battle cards that I'm playing, I have critical. It would feel wrong not to be able to abuse a card like this. So yeah, self-explanatory, this card really. So for the 1-drops, I do play 2 copies of Kami. So what this one is, it's basically Bolgos, but for green. So I don't really need to explain this that much. It's just a really good card and an alternate turn 1 play if you don't open wings. Speaking of wings, I do play 4 copies of wings. It's pretty standard in Slug. You need 4 copies of this. You want to see it as fast as possible. If you don't know what it does, basically it's a barrier 5k, and while it's in play, you can only have 1 of it. But while it's in play, it reduces the Slug's army costs in your hand by 1. So if you establish this turn 1, the rest of the game you're just gonna have a really good game. If the opponent can't deal with this, it just sits on the board and it takes over the game. It really does. For the 2-drops, so the 2-drops I play 2 copies of the free blocker. I play 2 copies of the Lord Slug Return to Form, 2 copies of the new starter deck Vegeta, 2 copies of Double Impact Krillin, and then obviously the 4 super combos. So having the free blocker is really useful. If your board gets wiped, you can build up bond quite easily with this card, or if you feel like you need to be a bit more defensive because the opponent's got a couple of cards on board, you can play him for free and it's a blocker. The Krillin is pretty useful going into some certain matchups. Being able to pop 1 cost and 2 costs are nice, especially if you go against the mirror match. You can kill the Krillin. You can kill the wings. This being able to search your combo pieces was nice. For 1 energy, it's just a pretty good card. Having Vegeta in the deck, he's an alternate self-awakener as well. If you go first, you can awaken turn 2 with it if the opponent attacks you, which is nice. And obviously, he becomes critical. So what he does is, if you don't know what he does, he is pretty new. So he has an active main ability where once per turn you get to choose a card in your life, add it to your hand, and if you do, he gains plus 5k crit for the turn. So he's a 15k crit, and he pairs up pretty well with the Kais. Like I say, being able to give this double strike, and he's crit, it feels wrong not to have it. Especially when you're trying to push for the game as well. He can push for the game. So the super combos, nothing really need to be said. It's the best super combo in the game for green. You have to run it, in my opinion. I prefer him over the Namekian one. So, drawing 2 is much better than drawing 1, in my opinion. So for the 3 costs, I play 4 of each. So I play 4 of the Adonic Warrior Angila, and then 4 of the AOD slug. So, yeah, it's pretty self-explanatory. It's needed in the deck. You want to see these as much as possible. It's a combo-based deck. You find them as fast as you can. You take over the game quickly. Just in case you don't know what they do, this one on play, he makes your opponent discard a card, and then for 1 energy, you get to play a 3-cost Slugs Army from your hand. Well, 3 cost or lower. So ideally, you want to be playing this. And this card, it's a 15k crit, and he's got Bond 2. When he attacks, if you lead a card as Slugs Army, the opponent has to discard a card. So it's pretty good. So he's the main target you want to be giving double strike to, because making the opponent lose 3 cards is just so good. 1 from hand and then 2 from life. It feels so good. It can take over games, this card alone. I feel like he's the best card in the deck without a doubt. Then the 4-drop, play 4 copies of this. So if you don't know what this does, Bond 2, on play, you get to choose a 3-cost or lower Slugs Army in your drop area. Play it, and then if you do, you get to untap an energy. So yeah, with wings, he becomes a 3-drop, and because he untaps an energy, he's technically a 2-drop on turn 3, which is really, really nice, especially if you're going to be reviving a card like this. If you're reviving this, you can play 3 for this, bring this back. If you have Frieza's Army Healing Pod on board, you get to draw a card because it was revived, which replaces the Slugs Army that you just played. You will untap an energy, and that energy can then be used for this card skill to play this card from hand. So turn 3, you can get these 3 cards on board quite easily. And that can really start to take over a game. You'll make the opponent discard with this, you'll make the opponent discard with this, and you make the opponent discard with leader. Turn 3, discarding 3 is just such a strong start to the game as well, especially if you can awaken on turn 2. The discarding happens really, really fast. It really does take over the game. And with these being 20Ks and this being 15, you can swing at the board quite easily, so it has a slight essence of board removal, but it's not the best. And because we're playing the 4-drop, we obviously have to play the 6-drop. This is basically the win con. Well, it's not really the win con, but it's an alternate win con. He's just such a good card. It would be wrong not to play it. He has EX Evolve for 2 energy. You place 1 card from your hand in the drop area, and then he evolves on top of a 4-cost or higher Slugs Army. Lord Slug card. Double Strike 25k. Bond 3. On play, you get to remove 3 cards from the opponent's hand. So you choose cards in your opponent's hand, and then discard them, which is so good. The opponent doesn't reveal the hand, but you just choose 3 at random, which, 9 times out of 10, by the time you get to play this, the opponent will only be on maybe 4 or 5 cards in hand. So this, with the leader, removes 4, he'll be on 1 card, swing, double strike, GG. So yeah, that was the deck profile. If you did enjoy, please do consider subscribing. If you have any questions or any feedback that you would like to give about the deck, please leave it in the comment section down below. And if you have any suggestions on what type of decks you would like to see in the future, or if you would like to see this deck in action, please let me know, and I will try and get as many videos sent out and posted as fast as I possibly can. Once again, Corey from Comics Lookout UK, and peace.